Technology may have been miseducated, but you do not have to be. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Miseducation of Technology podcast. I'm your host, Danielle, an attorney, tech policy professional, and someone who is deeply committed to helping the Black community navigate the ways technology is shaping our lives. In episode 1, we set the stage, breaking down how technology isn't neutral and how it often mirrors the same biases and inequities that have existed in society for generations. Today, we're taking that conversation even deeper, exploring a concept called the New Jim Code, a term coined by Ruha Benjamin that describes how artificial intelligence, powered by algorithms, is being used in ways that silently reinforce discrimination. Now, if you're not familiar with Ruha Benjamin, she's a sociologist and professor at Princeton University, and her work focuses on the intersection of race, technology, and justice. In her book, Race After Technology, Abolitionist Tools for the New Jim Code, she explains how discrimination isn't just written into laws or social structures. It's embedded in the technologies that shape our daily lives. Instead of eliminating bias, these systems often automate and scale discrimination, making it even harder to see and even harder to challenge. One of the biggest ways this happens is through algorithms, the step-by-step instructions that power artificial intelligence. These algorithms influence who gets a job interview, who is approved for a loan and at what rate, who is targeted by law enforcement, and could possibly one day determine how medical resources are distributed on a large scale. And the craziest part about this is most people don't even realize it is happening because when AI is involved, decisions feel neutral, even when they are not. AI learns from the data, and that data is often a reflection of the biases of the past. Instead of fixing historical injustices, AI can often make them worse, codifying discrimination in ways that feel scientific and objective. That is why in this episode, we're going to explain some things. We're going to break down how algorithms work, how they fuel AI, and how they contribute to the bias we see in technology. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clearer understanding of how the new Jim Code operates and why it's critical that we address it before it becomes even more deeply entrenched in our lives. So, let's get into it. To understand the new Jim Code, we first need to answer one basic question. What is an algorithm? At its simplest, an algorithm is a set of instructions for completing a task. Think of it like a recipe. If you are baking a cake, the recipe tells you step by step what to do. Mix the flour, the sugar, the eggs, bake it for a certain amount of time, and voila, you have a cake. Now imagine that instead of a recipe for a cake, you have a set of instructions that will, for example, tell you how to sort through millions of web pages to find the one that you are looking for. That is essentially what an algorithm does. It follows rules to process information and deliver results. But here is where things get tricky. In the world of artificial intelligence, algorithms can do more than just follow instructions. They can actually learn from the data it is being fed. And that is what we call machine learning. So let's say that you want to create an AI that can recognize coffee cups in photos. You'll start by feeding it millions of pictures of coffee cups. Over time, the algorithm learns what a coffee cup looks like, and it will start to recognize the coffee cup shape, size, color, and other features. Once it's trained, it can look at a new photo and identify whether there's a coffee cup in it. But here is the central problem. An algorithm is only as good as the data it is trained on. If the data is incomplete or biased, the algorithm will learn those biases. And that's where things can go really, really wrong. So you may be asking, how does bias get into these systems? Well, the answer is no surprise, it comes down to the data. So let's go back to our coffee cup example. If most of the photos you use to train an algorithm show white ceramic mugs, the system will struggle to recognize coffee cups that look different, like a black travel mug or a paper cup. Now apply that same logic to something like facial recognition technology. If an AI system is trained mostly on images of white men, it will be much better at identifying white men's faces than everyone else's. But when it encounters faces outside of that narrow data set, such as black and brown faces, it may struggle to make accurate identifications. And this isn't just theory. This is happening in real life with serious consequences. For example, a groundbreaking 2018 study by then MIT Media Lab researcher and now Dr. Joy Balamwini and her colleague Timnit Jabru analyzed multiple major commercial facial recognition technology systems and found staggering racial and gender disparities in their accuracy. The study found that these systems, one, misidentified the gender of lighter skinned men less than 1% of the time. Two, misidentified the gender of lighter skinned women up to 7% of the time. Three, misidentified the gender of darker skinned men up to 12% of the time. And four, misidentified gender of darker skinned women up to 35% of the time. In other words, the darker the skin, the less accurate the AI became. Black women had the highest error rate of them all. This means that facial recognition software, widely used in policing, hiring, airport security, and even unlocking smartphones, is least reliable for the very people who are most at risk of being misidentified. And when these inaccuracies spill over into high stakes situations, the consequences are devastating. So here's how this bias plays out in real life. Let's take a look at some cases where individuals were wrongfully accused due to facial recognition technology misidentifications. Number 1, Robert Williams versus Detroit Police Department. In January of 2020, Robert Williams, a black man, was wrongfully arrested in front of his family based on a false facial recognition match. He was detained for approximately 30 hours before being released. This incident is recognized as the first publicly reported case of a wrongful arrest due to facial recognition technology. Number 2, Niger Parks versus Woodbridge Township Police Department. Niger Parks, a black man, was arrested in 2019 after being misidentified by facial recognition software as a shoplifting suspect. Despite having evidence of his innocence, he was jailed for over a week and faced significant legal expenses before the charges were dismissed. Number 3, Michael Oliver versus Detroit Police Department. In July 2019, Michael Oliver was arrested and charged with larceny after being misidentified by facial recognition technology. The case was eventually dismissed, but not before Oliver endured the stress and stigma of a wrongful arrest. And lastly, Portia Woodruff versus Detroit Police Department. In February of 2023, Portia Woodruff, an 8 months pregnant black woman, was arrested based on a false facial recognition match, accusing her of carjacking and robbery. She was detained for 11 hours before being released, and the charges were later dismissed. These aren't just rare mistakes. They are part of a disturbing pattern. The same technology that misidentifies Black women 35% of the time is being used to make life-altering decisions about arrests, security risks, and even employment opportunities. Facial recognition isn't the only AI-driven system reinforcing discrimination. Many banks and lenders use AI algorithms to determine who gets approved for loans and at what interest rates. These systems analyze historical lending data to assess a borrower's risk, but that history is deeply rooted in discrimination. Take redlining, for example. Redlining is the discriminatory practice where banks and financial institutions systematically refuse to provide loans or financial services to people in certain neighborhoods, often based on race, by outlining those areas in red on maps to indicate high risk zones. For decades, banks systematically denied loans to people in predominantly Black, Hispanic, and low income neighborhoods, preventing families from building generational wealth. Although redlining was banned in 1968 under the Fair Housing Act, its effects are still deeply felt today with lower property values, underinvestment in Black communities, and limited access to financial resources. So, what happens when AI learns from that history? AI models, quote unquote, learn that loans in historically redlined areas had higher default rates without understanding why those communities were denied fair housing to credit in the first place. Borrowers from these areas, even if they have strong financial qualifications, may be denied loans or given higher interest rates simply because of their zip code. So it shouldn't be much of a surprise that a 2021 study by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that Black and Hispanic borrowers were 105% and 78% more likely, respectively, to receive high cost mortgages compared to white borrowers, even after controlling for credit score and other key factors. So the key issue here is that AI does not understand historical discrimination. It just detects patterns and reinforces them. Instead of fixing past injustices, these systems automate and perpetuate them, locking communities into cycles of financial exclusion. Predictive policing. AI is also influencing law enforcement decisions, and the consequences can be just as harmful. Many cities now use predictive policing algorithms, which are AI systems that analyze past crime data to forecast where crimes will occur and who is most likely to commit them. On the surface, it sounds efficient, but there's a huge problem. Historical crime data isn't objective. It reflects decades of over-policing in Black and Brown communities. Here's how it plays out. Number one, AI looks at past arrest records and notices more arrests in certain neighborhoods. Number two, the algorithm flags these areas as high crime zones. Number three, police increase patrols in that area. Number four, more police presence leads to more arrests, often for minor infractions that wouldn't be enforced elsewhere. Number five, the new data reinforces the AI's prediction that the neighborhood is dangerous. And number six, the cycle continues indefinitely, keeping Black and Brown communities under constant surveillance. So let's take Chicago, for example. The city's police department ran one of the largest person based predictive policing programs in the country, which was referred to as the Heat List. First launched in 2012, it aimed to predict who was most likely to be involved in gun violence, either as a perpetrator or a victim. But instead of precisely targeting high risk individuals, the program cast a wide net. A lawsuit later revealed that the list included every single person arrested or fingerprinted in Chicago since 2013. An analysis by the RAND Institute found the system to be ineffective, and a report from the Chicago's Inspector General criticized its heavily reliance on arrest records, even when those arrests led to no convictions. Civil rights groups also condemned the program for disproportionately targeting communities of color. Ultimately, after years of controversy, the program was shut down in January of 2020. But unfortunately, the problem isn't just policing. Companies have also faced serious issues when deploying AI powered decision making systems. Let's take a look at a popular tech company's AI labeling feature. In this case, a Black software engineer exposed that the company's image recognition algorithm misclassified photos of his Black friends as gorillas. Yes, you heard that right. Gorillas. Rather than addressing the core issue, which is why its AI struggled to correctly identify Black faces in the first place, the company simply removed the label gorilla altogether, sidestepping the deeper problem of bias being in its machine learning. And this is exactly what I mean when I say AI reflects the biases of the people who create it. AI doesn't think for itself. It learns from the data it is trained on, which is shaped by the perspectives and the priorities of its developers. The fact that an AI system would associate Black people with gorillas is not a neutral mistake. It's a reflection of the same racist stereotypes that have existed for centuries, and now it's encoded into the technology. This isn't just a technological glitch. It's a direct consequence of the historical dehumanization of Black people, reinforced by a lack of diversity in the teams building these AI systems. Throughout history, these type of comparisons of Black people to apes were used to justify slavery, segregation, and violence, portraying them as less than human to deny them the rights and dignity they deserve. These stereotypes fueled scientific racism, eugenics, and discriminatory policies that persist today. And when an AI system replicates this bias, it's not operating in a vacuum. It's drawing from a world where prejudice is embedded into the data, the culture, and the institutions. But this also reveals another glaring issue that is at the heart of the problem. The people designing and deploying these AI systems often don't reflect the diversity of the society they are building it for. If Black engineers, ethicists, and decision makers were meaningfully involved in AI development, it is far less likely that such an egregious error would have made it past testing or been dismissed until it became a public scandal. The fact that AI can misidentify Black people, or worse, associate them with animals, suggests that no one in the room anticipated this problem or that those who did were not empowered to intervene. That's a failure of representation, which contributed to the miseducation of this technology. Because AI bias doesn't happen by accident. It happens when homogeneous teams create systems without questioning whose experiences are centered and whose are ignored. These systems are trained on data sets that reflect historical inequalities, and if those building them lack diverse perspectives, they may not even recognize the problem until it's too late. A truly inclusive team would have asked critical questions early on. Has this model been tested on diverse skin tones? Are we accounting for racial bias in our data sets? What safeguards are in place to prevent these errors from reinforcing real world discrimination? Without these voices in the room, AI will continue to reinforce and automate the biases of the past. This is why increasing diversity in AI development isn't just about fairness or optics. It's about ensuring that the technology shaping our world serves and protects everyone, not just a select few. We cannot afford to let the same biases that have harmed Black communities for centuries to be hard coded into the future. A world where AI works equitably for all is possible, but only if we are intentional about who is designing it and whose experiences are prioritized. And just to make this clear, this isn't about harping on the white majority or trying to make them feel bad, nor is it about Black people painting themselves as victims. But if this conversation makes you uncomfortable, consider this. If Black people were the overwhelming majority building AI systems, I have no doubt that certain historical stereotypes about white people would also find their way into the technology. Why? Because everyone has biases, prejudices, and preconceived notions, whether we acknowledge them or not. That's human nature. And that's exactly why diversity of perspectives isn't just nice to have, it's necessary when creating technologies that shape society in such profound ways. Without it, we risk embedding and amplifying biases that harm entire communities, often without anyone realizing it until it's too late. But I have digressed, okay? So let's move on to the next example. Automated hiring discrimination. AI bias isn't just a problem in facial recognition or image labeling or predictive policing. It's also influencing who gets hired. Another company developed an AI powering hiring tool, but later scrapped it after discovering it automatically downgraded resumes that included the word women's. For example, women's chess club, women's swim club, along those lines. And it also penalized applicants from women only colleges. The AI had learned from historically biased hiring data, which made it more likely to favor male applicants. This is yet another example of how AI doesn't just reflect the world as it is. It amplifies the inequalities that already exist. When hiring decisions have historically reflected a higher percentage of men, an AI trained on that data will simply replicate those patterns, reinforcing gender discrimination instead of eliminating it. And this isn't just an isolated case. Many companies are experimenting with AI in hiring, often without fully understanding the biases these systems inherit. And luckily for you, I actually wrote a blog post that dives deeper into this issue, breaking down how AI driven hiring tools can perpetuate discrimination and what companies should be doing to prevent it. You can go to my website, attorneydanielle.ai, for a full breakdown of how bias creeps in to hiring algorithms and what it means for the future of work. But again, I digress. Let's talk AI and healthcare. And I hate to be the continual bearer of bad news, but the issue of algorithmic bias can even extend to the healthcare system. In 2019, a study published in Science found that an AI system widely used in U.S. hospitals systematically assigned lower risk scores, which are numerical values used by hospitals to determine which patients need urgent care or additional medical resources, to Black patients compared to white patients, even when they had the exact same medical condition. So, to make that clear, Black people received lower risk scores than white patients, even when they had the same exact medical conditions. And this bias wasn't random. It stemmed from how the algorithm was designed. The AI used healthcare spending as a measure of patients' medical needs, assuming that those who incurred higher healthcare costs were sicker and required more care. However, due to systemic disparities in U.S. healthcare systems, Black patients have historically received less medical treatment and lower healthcare spending than white patients, not because they're healthier, but because of deeply embedded inequities. For example, Black communities face barriers such as unequal access to healthcare, racial bias in medical treatment, fewer referrals for specialized care, and underfunded hospitals in predominantly Black neighborhoods. Additionally, financial barriers, underinsurance, and a well-founded distrust of the medical system rooted in historical injustices like the Tuskegee syphilis study further contributed to disparities in healthcare utilization. So, because the AI relied on healthcare spending as a proxy for medical need, it incorrectly concluded that Black patients were healthier than they actually were, making them less likely to receive the extra care and resources they needed. The study estimated that this bias reduced the number of Black patients identified for additional care by more than half. And just to be clear, this wasn't an intentional act of racism. It was an AI system doing exactly what it was designed to do, analyzing past patterns and applying them to future decisions. But that's exactly the danger. When the AI is trained on data from a healthcare system with a history of underestimating Black patients' medical needs, it doesn't challenge those inequalities. It automates and scales them up, making disparities even harder to correct. And if the AI is already deciding who gets priority access to medical care, what happens when corporations start using it to determine insurance coverage, medication costs, or even organ transplants? These examples highlight a common theme. AI isn't just reflecting bias, it's making it harder to address. So, facial recognition, banking, predictive policing, hiring, and healthcare algorithms all have one thing in common. They take biased data, run it through an algorithm, and present the output as fact. The problem isn't just the bad data. It's that AI systems do not have the capability to question the data. They don't ask why certain groups have been historically excluded or over-policed. They just detect patterns and apply them over and over again. And the more these systems are used, the harder it becomes to challenge discrimination. Why? Because when an algorithm makes a decision, it feels neutral even when it's replicating decades of injustice. And that is why we call it the new Jim Code, because AI is being used to make decisions that reinforce historical disparities, but with a veneer of scientific objectivity. And this is what we call algorithmic bias, when AI systems produce flawed, discriminatory, or unfair outcomes because they learn from the data that reflects historical inequalities. And the danger isn't just that these biases exist, it's that the AI automates and scales them. Without intervention, these flawed systems won't just replicate discrimination, they'll deepen it, normalize it, and make it harder to correct. But this doesn't have to be our reality because AI has the potential to be a powerful tool for equity, fairness, and progress if we train it properly. When AI models are built with diverse, representative data and designed with fairness in mind, they can be used to reduce disparities rather than reinforce them. AI could help identify and correct biases in hiring, expand access to fair lending, improve medical diagnostics for underrepresented populations, and even create more accountable and transparent policing practices. If we invest in ethical AI development, we can build systems that challenge discrimination rather than codify it. What I'm trying to do here is not paint a grim picture, nor am I trying to position the Black community as victims. My goal is to educate on the impending harms of unchecked AI bias and to highlight how we can do better. The future of AI is still being written, and we have a choice. Either let these systems deepen inequalities or use them as a force for progress. So, let's discuss the future of AI and who is in it. Because so far we have unpacked how AI isn't neutral, how it reflects and amplifies bias, and how these systems affect everything from policing to banking and hiring. But now let's take a step back and ask the bigger question. Who's actually in control of AI? And what does that mean for us? Well, right now, a handful of powerful tech companies are shaping the future of artificial intelligence. These corporations own the data, the tools, and the infrastructure that make AI possible. They are setting the rules for how it's developed and deciding how to use it in everything from healthcare and financial systems to government surveillance and hiring decisions. But here is the problem. Their priorities aren't necessarily our priorities. AI isn't being built to create a fairer world at the very moment. It's being built to maximize profit and efficiency. And when fairness conflicts with profit, guess which one wins? But if we sit back and do nothing and let these systems evolve without intervention or accountability, this is the future we are headed towards. A world where AI determines who gets medical treatment and Black patients are deprioritized. A world where AI decides who gets hired, promoted, or granted loans, locking entire communities out of economic opportunities. A world where AI-powered surveillance expands unchecked, disproportionately targeting Black and Brown communities while the people controlling these systems remain unregulated. And a world where AI reinforces past discrimination so effectively that discrimination and inequality don't just persist. They become more deeply ingrained, more automated, and harder to fight. And here's the real danger. Once AI systems become deeply embedded in society, they're hard to dismantle. If companies and governments become too reliant on them, they have no incentive to fix their flaws, especially when those flaws benefit the people already in power. But again, it doesn't have to be this way. AI isn't some unstoppable force of nature. It's a tool, and tools can be redesigned. But that won't happen unless we demand accountability. That means, number one, pushing for transparency. We need laws requiring companies to explain how their AI works and what data it's using. If we don't know what's happening behind the scenes, we can't challenge biased decisions. Number two, insisting on diverse data. AI needs to be trained on data sets that reflect the full range of human experiences, not just the perspectives of the dominant majority. Number three, auditing for bias. Companies need to test their algorithms for bias before rolling them out, not after lives have already been impacted. Number four, challenging AI's role in decision making, because not every decision should be automated. Full stop. AI should assist human decision making, not replace it entirely, especially in high stake areas like hiring, lending, policing, and healthcare. And number five, and perhaps the most important one, we have to educate ourselves. One of the most powerful tools we have is knowledge. Understanding how AI works and how it impacts society is the first step towards holding it accountable. Now, I've said this in the first episode, and I will continue saying it through future episodes because it is the foundation of everything we are discussing here. Hosea 4:6 says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." This isn't just scripture. This is a warning. What we do not know can and will be used against us, whether it's technology, law, or policy. Ignorance is not an option. That's why resources like the Miseducation of Technology podcast exist to break these systems down and give people the tools to navigate the digital world effectively. And if you want to go even deeper on these issues and learn more, please check out my website, attorneydanielle.ai, from podcast episodes and YouTube videos to articles and curated guides. There's a wealth of information to help you engage critically with technology because AI isn't going anywhere, but neither are we. So the bottom line, who controls AI controls the future. If we don't demand accountability and educate ourselves, then we're not just letting AI shape the future. We're letting the same powerful forces that created today's inequalities decide what tomorrow looks like. And if history has taught us anything, it's that when power goes unchecked, it rarely works in our favor. Ultimately, AI is a tool. It's not inherently good or bad. It all depends on how we decide to use it. And if we want technology to work for us and not against us, we need to be informed, engaged, and ready to demand better. Well, that is all for today's episode. We've unpacked the new Jim Code, how discrimination gets embedded into technology, shaping everything from predictive policing to healthcare decisions. But what happens when these same biases extend beyond algorithms and start determining who gets to work? In our next episode, we are tackling one of the biggest shifts in the modern economy: automation and its impact on Black labor. As industries turn to AI for efficiency, Black workers in fields like manufacturing, transportation, and retail are being disproportionately displaced. What does this mean for financial stability, income inequality, and long-term career prospects of the Black community? And more importantly, what can we do about it? In our next episode, we'll explore how Black workers can navigate the rise of automation, from upskilling in tech to advocating for equitable workforce policies. Because the future of work isn't just about who gets left behind, it's about who gets ahead. Until then, remember, technology may have been miseducated, but you do not have to be. Let's learn, let's grow, and let's thrive together. See you next week on the Miseducation of Technology podcast.